So you noticed your emotional reactions and your circumstances. You made a choice to grow and show up differently. You connected with your inner child. You listened to your higher power for truth. And you took loving action with courage and clarity and self-respect. And now we come to the final step of the Secure Husband process, the results, evaluating how it went. Welcome back to the Secure Husband podcast. Bruce Abbott, certified professional coach, founder of SecureHusband.com, where my goal is to help good men learn to lead their marriages by healing themselves first. This is the last in our 6-podcast series on the Secure Husband process, just diving a little deeper into it for detail. And once you've taken that loving action, this step you ask, did that action create change? How do I feel now? How did she respond? How did I respond? Is the relationship moving forward, or am I still abandoning myself? And when I took that action, was it done in truth and honesty? Or am I still clinging on to a fantasy I have in my head? This step is essential because it's where you turn that intention that we had in the very first step into integration. It's where we get honest about whether the way that we're showing up is bringing us more peace. Because until you take that action, you don't know. But once you take action, now we get to evaluate, do we have more alignment? Do we have more connection? How do I feel inside about it? It could be revealing deeper wounds that still need healing. Just understand that no matter what you find in this step, there's no failure here because you went through this process and you took action. And if you look back and feel like there's still something more that needs to be done, you begin again, back at step 1, noticing. You're noticing that maybe that loving action you took didn't result in any change. And so you start the process all over again. And the evaluation part is really important because when you take loving action, part of you is hoping that something shifts. You're hoping that she responds. You're hoping that she comes closer, that she opens up emotionally or physically. And you're hoping to feel more peace and more strength and more clarity. And that's natural. But the evaluation part is really important because you may be attaching your worth to the result. And that's where it gets a little dicey. Because sometimes your loving action, it leads to a breakthrough. And other times it seems like nothing happens. And in some cases, the reaction may be worse than you expected. And that's why evaluation matters, not to judge yourself, not to decide if you did it right, but just to sit in the truth, just to learn, to grow, to objectively look at what happened and ask yourself, what did I discover from that action? What did it teach me about my healing? What did it teach me about her capacity right now? What did it teach me about the situation? Am I still aligned with myself and with self-love? Am I still abandoning myself? Or do I feel like I have shown up for myself? Be honest. Be truthfully honest with yourself. And when you look at it from an evaluation perspective, that sounds so formal, but what it does is it brings you back to the ground. And it allows you to objectively look at the situation. Sometimes when you take action, you can spiral afterwards into hopelessness. See, it didn't work. Or you might think, oh, it must be working. I'm just going to keep doing that same thing over and over. And maybe not. This step gives you the opportunity to look at it separate from emotion and rooted in reality and truth and not fantasy. Let's dive a little deeper. Ask yourself, how do I feel after taking that action? Now, this is about you. This is not about her. Just sit down and ask yourself, did I feel more grounded or more anxious afterward? Did I stay connected to my inner child? Or did I abandon him again? How proud did you feel? Did you feel proud of how you showed up? Even if it was hard, that took a lot of courage. You were overcoming a lot of fear. And ask yourself if the action felt aligned with what your higher power told you. This is the first layer of truth. This is the foundation of reality because sometimes even if she doesn't respond at all, you feel peace, you feel self-respect, you feel free. That matters more than you realize because again, this is about you and not about her. And then you can look at how did she respond? Truthfully, how did she respond? It's not about blaming or judging her. It's about noticing reality. And ask yourself those questions. Did she feel safer with me or did she shut down more? And if so, is that her fear? Or is that mine? Did she soften and respond in a positive way? Or did she tense up and put her guard up? Or did she stay neutral? Was she open or was she very close to the chest in her words? Did you notice any shift in her body language or her willingness to engage? or her words themselves. For this evaluation, it is important to gauge their response. But don't jump to conclusions. This is just to observe. Some of these shifts are instant and others are going to unfold over time. It could take weeks or months. This is about patterns. It's not isolated moments. Did this action that you took, this loving action toward yourself and her, did it create more connection or did it create more distance? And again, not just external connection. Do I feel more connected to myself? Am I still walking in truth, or have I slipped back into proving and chasing and fixing and performing and all those other behaviors from before? If your action felt right but didn't lead to external change, that's still a win, because the goal is to live in alignment with truth, not manipulate someone into responding. Remember, you can't fix your wife. So what might this look like? One of my guys was telling me about a conversation he had with his wife. He really felt that he needed to stand up for his emotional needs. And his conversation was something like, babe, and he said this in a very calm, loving way, I don't expect you to meet all my needs, but I do need emotional honesty in our conversations. And he was telling me that her response was just dismissive. She just shrugged it off, cold, withdrawn. And in our session, he was so defeated. He just felt just like a balloon deflated. Just. So we walked through it. I was asking him, okay, how did you feel afterwards? And he was like, strangely, I felt proud. I was nervous, but I finally said something real. And when I asked him, I said, she obviously didn't respond how you hoped. And he was like, no. But I asked him, I said, did the action reflect your truth? And he said, yeah. And that's when I told him, man, you got to celebrate that win. Celebrate it. See, he broke a lifelong pattern of silence. That's healing. He was telling me that his wife came back around and she said something to him about, hey, remember when you said that thing about emotional honesty? I've been thinking about it. And they had a discussion. So again, this is outcome independent of others' responses. And it may not always be right there in the moment. Healing takes time, but it starts with truth and you have to take action. But you do have to be careful that you're not people-pleasing in disguise. I know one time I decided that I was going to do something special for my wife as a loving gesture. But in all reality, the reason that I was doing that was, honestly, I was hoping she would be a little warmer and affectionate that day. And it didn't happen. And I remember I was triggered. And I withdrew, I shut down, I got cold. She was confused. She had no idea. I did this thing really nice for her. And then I went quiet the whole rest of the day. Now, later on in life, when I learned more about this process, I'm able to go back and look at those moments and say, okay, was this loving to my inner child? No, because my little boy inside actually felt like we're begging again. And then if I go to my higher power and say, hey, God, was that truthful and loving to myself? And he says, no, it came from fear and not clarity. Because afterwards, how did I feel about it? Well, I felt exhausted. I felt resentful. I felt like I was trying to earn love and affection again. But that's why evaluating it is so important, because that's good awareness. Even though it looked like a loving action, the energy behind it, the purpose behind it wasn't love. It was fear. That's what the evaluation step reveals. And because change is not always this big, huge event that happens. Sometimes change is small. They're micro moments, I like to call them. Sometimes they're very minimal in nature. They're quiet. They're not dramatic. They take time. And it's okay to be aware of how your actions are affecting your wife. No, you're not trying to fix her. But you do want to be aware of signs that maybe she is softening up and feeling safer with you. If you've taken a loving action and maybe she has a softer tone of voice, she lingers a little bit longer in conversation. Maybe there's small physical touch, maybe a touch on the arm. You could see it in her face sometimes. Does she have that guarded look she normally has? Or is it a little bit softer? She might ask you questions. She might reflect something that you said later on. It's okay to be aware of these things in response to your loving action. And that's how you know if the actions that you take out of your truth and honesty and love for yourself and love for your wife, you'll know which direction it's taking this relationship. But more importantly, it gives you an opportunity to see signs that you're changing, If when you take loving action and you notice that you don't chase when she becomes distant, maybe you speak without doing the whole over-explaining, defending thing. You don't spiral into old guilt. You recover from conflict faster. You feel more calm, even if she doesn't respond the way you want to. But you'll notice, you'll feel it inside. You'll know when you show up because it's who you are, not to get something, not to give to get, people-pleasing or caretaking. But sometimes those things are very subtle. But if you're paying attention, you're always going to learn something from it. Even when her response goes nowhere, when nothing seems to change, that's the hardest part in all of this. When you've done the work, you've taken aligned, loving actions, nothing changes, she's still distant, she still stays cold. Maybe it's gotten worse. You evaluate, what did I do for the action? How did I feel? What was her response? Because your action doesn't guarantee her transformation, but it always reveals what she's currently capable of. And that's good information because then you can stop living in fantasy. You can stop hoping she'll become someone that she's not willing to be. And you stop pretending and betraying your inner child in the process. Well, Bruce, that sounds like I'm giving up. It's getting real. That's why evaluating as part of the process is so important, because sometimes your healing reveals that the relationship is no longer aligned. And sometimes it reveals that it's just going to take longer than you hoped, but there is potential. Evaluating the results from your actions shows that, and you're never going to regret showing up with love and truth, ever, because that is self-loving. That is treating yourself with kindness and compassion and self-worth. So you've evaluated. You took loving action. You've sat down and looked objectively at the result. Now what? It's all full circle. Because no matter what the result of your action was, whether it brought more connection and clarity, or maybe it brought more silence and disconnection, now you go back to step one and you notice, okay, what's happening now? Now that I've taken this action, what has sparked inside of me? So where is my inner child in all of this now? And you go back to noticing what lie might be surfacing again, what truth do I need to remember? But you're not starting over from square one. You're repeating the process, but you're further along in the healing. So you're not truly starting over. You're just beginning the cycle again. It's a loop. Every loop that you complete builds more truth. Every time you do this process of noticing and then choosing and healing your inner child and connecting to a higher power, taking action, evaluating, then you come back, that builds more clarity. And from there, you build more peace. And that's how you heal yourself. That's how you heal your marriage. But you have to evaluate it with honesty. Because taking the loving action is powerful, but looking at it from an objective point of view, that's where your wisdom grows. And again, it's not about perfection. It's all about alignment. It's about truth. When you can look at the results and say, I'm going to keep showing up for myself no matter what happens out there, that's what makes you secure. And that's what makes you the kind of man that your wife can trust, because you can trust yourself. So after you've taken that action and you're saying, what's next? This is how you know. This is how you notice what worked and what didn't, and how you keep moving forward in truth and not fear. I hope this podcast was helpful for you. If so, give me a review. Hit that subscribe button for more Secure Husband episodes. Hey, share this episode with someone who you think may need to hear this. Visit securehusband.com for more resources and to book one-on-one coaching with me. And I'll see you again on the next Secure Husband podcast. Thanks for listening.